Hi, class. This is Bill Gibbs. I'm your instructor for this speech class, and I know what you're thinking. Wow, he's a whole lot more handsome than his picture portrays. Just joking aside, I am who I am, and I've had a long, full life, so I show it, I guess. Now, I'm here to give you 7 pointers on how to improve your very first speech. That's the personal journey of faith or the personal narrative speech that you will be giving in week 2, your very first speech. 7, count them, 7 pointers that will help you be a more effective speaker. They're in no particular order. They're just as they came to me. First, consider this to be your dip into the big pool of public speaking by only putting in your big toe. You're not plunging in full blast. You're just sticking that toe in just a little bit to see what it's like. So don't build into this too much anxiety. Don't make it bigger than it really is. Just consider it to be a trial by error experiment, and you're just going to do the best you can. That's all you can do. Okay. Secondly, number 2, download the evaluation form in advance, read it over so you know what I will be looking for in your speech. There will be no surprises in with the grading. Number 3, make sure that you understand this is your personal narrative or your personal journey of faith in most instances. This is not a research project. This is not a project where you have to do voluminous amounts of study to prepare. Think through your life. Isolate a few incidences that you want to talk about and talk about them. You only have a handful of minutes to do this, so it's not going to be your whole life. Don't start from the very beginning and go to the present day. Pick out a few incidents during your life that illustrate how you have progressed in your personal journey. Fourthly, use notes. It's okay. Here's my notes right here. Now what I've done, and you can't see this, but I'm actually resting my notes on the back of an easy chair. And I push this up in front of the camera, and if I were speaking to an actual group, I would have the group in front of me and the chair right here. It gives me a place to rest my notes. I usually have only 1 page of notes. Actually, in this case, it's just a half a page with a few pointers on here. And that way your hands are free to use them as you will. Now, you don't have to use them as much as I do. You can rest them behind you or in front of you. Use them every once in a while. It is important to have a handful of gestures. I do grade for that, but I don't look for you to be doing them a lot. Secondly, when you do fifthly, I've lost count already. Apparently I'm a speech teacher, but not a mathematician. The 5th point is this, okay? The 5th point is this. Now, when you are speaking, you need to have the camera so that you can see basically from mid-chest or waist on up, so that I can see your arms, your shoulders, and your head. That way I can tell if you're looking at the camera. I can tell if the notes are being used but not being used too much. I can see your hands. I don't need to see your whole body. I don't want to see only your face. About what you're looking at here is what I would like to see. Now, by the way, I do need to actually see your audience. So before you begin, take the camera and pan the audience, or in some cases, if it's convenient, have the audience parade in front of the camera. I don't need them to have speaking roles. I just need them to be there so I know that they're actually there. You will be counted down if you don't have your audience unless you've made special arrangements ahead of time. Okay, next to last point, the 6th point. And that is stick with your time. You have 3 to 6 minutes, and I mean it. Okay, you will be graded down if it goes below 3 minutes or above 6 minutes. I do give a 30-second window on either side, but stay in that 3 to 6 minutes. That should be plenty for most people. And lastly, the 7th point is don't worry if you fluff it. You'll notice that I've had some uhs and ahs in here and a little bit of bobbles and so forth. And I know that's just part of speaking. Now, if I were giving this speech over and over, say the 50th time I've given it to different groups, they would have a right to expect me to be perfect. But on a one-off like this is, and as you are giving, there's going to be a few bobbles. As long as the bobbles are not too great and too distracting, I'll not mind very much. Okay, they're not graded down if you just have a handful of ums and ahs and things like that. I'm looking at your overall speech performance, not trying to be hypercritical. However, I do want to point that sometimes students will wind themselves up into knots because they're so consumed with fear of this speech. And my inspiration to you, or my point of advice to you, is this: it's not the end of the world. Even if you fail it or fluff it, it's not the end of the world. I used to have a friend years and years ago who she loved to play volleyball, but she was a terrible volleyball player. But she liked to play volleyball with a group that we met after work because it was something that was camaraderie, it was friends, it was a fun thing to do. And everybody knew she was terrible, and we just lived with it. We accepted it. But it got to her after a while that she was always fluffing the ball, dropping it, and missing points and so forth. And one day one of our other friends in the group came to her and he said, "Vivian, you act as if when you drop the ball or it goes by you that you're going to go to hell because you've goofed up so much." He says, "Let me ask you, does your salvation and your eternal life in heaven depend on whether you play volleyball well or not?" And she said, "No, it doesn't." And he says, "Then just enjoy the moment and do your best. We love you. We want you here. We don't want you to go away, but we don't want you to be tied up in knots either." And that's how I feel about it. Your salvation, your eternal destiny does not depend on whether or not you do well in this class or on this particular speech. I want you to do well, but I'm looking for improvement from speech to speech, and my goodness, this is just the first one. Okay? Thank you very much. I'm always available by email if you have additional questions. Take these pointers to mind. Let me mention them real quickly one more time as we close. I always like to wrap things up when I speak by telling you ahead of time what I'm going to speak about, and then coming back in and zoning in on those in more detail, and finally wrapping up by talking about them again. I want you to first consider this to be just a big toe experience as you're just getting started at this. Secondly, download the evaluations so that you have it in front of you. Thirdly, this is your personal journey. This is not a research project. Fourthly, okay to use notes, but kind of keep them away from your hands. Try to keep your hands free. Back of a big armchair works very well for this. Fifthly, look at the camera. Show everybody that's in there on the camera ahead of time. I don't need to see them during the speech, by the way, only before the speech is given. Then I only want it on you. Stick to the time, and finally, have fun with this and realize it's not the end of the world whether you succeed or fail. There'll be other speeches to continually improve upon as you go along. Thank you, and the Lord bless.